In the bitter chill of Montana's dawn, Maggie Dawson, a former Army helicopter pilot haunted by the ghosts of a mission gone tragically wrong, dangled precariously from an icy cliff. No signal, no rescue, only the whispering wind mocking her desperation. Just as hope faded, a dark silhouette emerged from the mist, a herd of wild Mustangs, led by a majestic black stallion locals called Shadow. What happened next defied nature itself, forever changing Maggie's life and binding her fate to the untamed spirit of the mountains. The early morning mist curled around the sleepy mountain town of Willow Creek like a living, breathing entity, swallowing its rustic cabins and shadowed pines into a soft, ghostly embrace. Located high in Montana's rugged northwestern mountains, Willow Creek was the kind of town where everybody knew everyone's secrets, except for those who arrived carrying secrets too heavy for words. Maggie Dawson was one of those arrivals. At 34, Maggie had the strong, lean build of someone accustomed to military discipline. Her straight chestnut hair, perpetually pulled into a practical ponytail, revealed a stern yet subtly gentle face with emerald eyes that held shadows deeper than the valley itself. Maggie spoke little and smiled even less, earning herself a reputation among the townsfolk as reserved yet reliable. But beneath her aloof demeanor, Maggie was drowning silently in memories. Once a celebrated U.S. Army helicopter pilot, Maggie's final mission in Iraq had ended tragically, engulfing her entire crew in flames and smoke. The lone survivor, Maggie returned stateside, only to find the echoes of gunfire and the screams of her lost comrades constantly reverberating in her ears. She had chosen Willow Creek seeking solitude and healing, hoping the mountain air might somehow cleanse her haunted soul. That particular morning, Maggie awoke before dawn. She dressed quickly, donning practical layers against the bitter mountain chill. Grabbing her heavy jacket and badge, she had accepted a temporary position assisting local authorities with mountain patrols. She stepped onto the porch of her modest log cabin. Frost crystallized in the air, and she exhaled deeply, savoring the clarity of the cold. Her radio crackled unexpectedly, interrupting the silence. "Maggie, Sheriff Walker here. Come in." Sheriff Grant Walker's voice, even through static, was unmistakably calm. Grant, a tall, broad-shouldered man in his early 50s, carried himself with quiet authority. His sandy hair was tinged silver at the temples, and his thoughtful blue eyes often held a hint of concern beneath their steady gaze. Though tough when necessary, Grant's kindness had quickly earned Maggie's respect and tentative trust. Maggie responded, pulling the radio to her lips. "Go ahead, Sheriff. We've picked up some suspicious activity near Devil's Ridge Trail. Possible smuggling. Can you check it out? Backup is en route, but it'll take time. Keep eyes open." "Copy that," Maggie replied without hesitation, grabbing a small pack and sidearm. She mounted her ATV, engine roaring to life, and headed out into the still dark wilderness, heart steady despite the shadows dancing within her mind. Willow Creek's mountains loomed silent and imposing, wrapped in mist that seemed denser as she climbed higher. Devil's Ridge was aptly named, narrow, treacherous, and bordered by sheer cliffs that plunged dramatically into oblivion. Maggie parked her ATV, deciding to continue cautiously on foot, her breath forming little clouds as she walked. The mist thickened, obscuring visibility down to mere feet, amplifying the mountain's isolation. A distant rustle set her instincts ablaze. She stopped abruptly, straining to listen, pulse quickening. Just as she reached to radio Grant again, movement flashed behind her. Before she could react, a crushing blow landed on the back of her skull. Bright lights exploded behind her eyes, and darkness engulfed her instantly. When Maggie came to, pain thundered through her skull, nausea churning violently in her stomach. Disoriented, she blinked rapidly, senses returning slowly. Her vision cleared to reveal an unimaginable horror. She dangled precariously from the cliffside, secured only by coarse ropes that bit viciously into her torso. Her arms were pinned behind her, her wrists tightly bound. Below stretched an endless void of jagged rocks, cloaked in swirling mist. A figure stepped from the mist, a man, stocky, with a scruffy beard and cold, emotionless eyes. Maggie recognized him immediately as one of the newcomers in town who claimed to be a miner. Clearly, his true trade was far darker. "Nothing personal, Dawson," the man sneered. "Just business. Stay quiet, and it'll end faster." He laughed, turning away as Maggie weakly struggled against her restraints. Helpless, despair began seeping into her bones along with the icy cold. The mist thickened, isolating her once more, and she found herself utterly alone, suspended between life and death. Time lost meaning. Pain and fatigue blurred her thoughts. Memories flooded her mind. Flames, explosions, the anguished cries of her crew. Guilt clawed at her heart. Perhaps, she thought bitterly, this was justice served coldly, atop a Montana mountain instead of burning sands halfway across the world. As the mist coiled tighter, she closed her eyes, barely holding on to consciousness. The sound of distant hoofbeats penetrated her fogged mind, a gentle rhythm growing steadily louder. Through her haze of pain, Maggie thought she was hallucinating, but as the sounds drew closer, curiosity forced her eyes open again. Emerging silently from the mist was a herd of wild mustangs, their figures ghostly yet majestic. They moved with an inherent grace, their coats glistening damply from the fog. At their head was a large stallion, black as midnight, powerful and imposing. Maggie recognized him from town rumors. Shadow, they called him, an elusive legend whose strength and resilience were revered. Shadow halted abruptly, tossing his mane as his deep, intelligent eyes settled directly upon Maggie. Something in his gaze gave her pause. There was a strange, knowing intensity there. Behind him, the herd paused, restless yet attentive. Maggie's rational mind battled fiercely. "They're wild animals," she whispered weakly. "They won't help me." Yet Shadow moved forward, ears flicking curiously. The stallion inspected the rope, snorting softly. Maggie, desperate, summoned her fading strength to whisper hoarsely, "Please, help." Shadow's ears perked at her voice. In a move so astonishing, Maggie nearly lost her breath. The stallion gently grasped the rope in his powerful jaws, testing its hold. Understanding dawned upon Maggie, mingled with disbelief. He intended to help her. Slowly, methodically, Shadow and the herd began pulling, muscles straining in remarkable harmony. Maggie felt her body inch upwards, agony lancing through her limbs. Each small movement brought hope, renewed strength, fighting the numbness that had settled in her bones. But the rope scraped menacingly against the sharp rocks, fraying precariously with each pull. Maggie held her breath, heart pounding frantically. Time slowed painfully as Shadow tugged again, his strength both remarkable and terrifyingly fragile in this desperate rescue. Then suddenly, a sharp snap echoed through the mist-filled silence. Maggie fell several inches before being jolted to a halt, now even closer to the precipice. The rope had partially frayed. One more tug could either lift her to safety or send her spiraling downward to death. Shadow paused briefly, sensing danger. Their gazes locked, woman and wild horse exchanging silent understanding. With fierce determination, Shadow steadied himself, ears pinned back. Maggie closed her eyes, whispering prayers she had long forgotten. With a final surge, the herd pulled as one. Maggie's heart nearly burst from her chest as she felt her body scrape painfully upward. With agonizing slowness, she finally felt solid ground beneath her knees. Collapsing onto the rocky edge, Maggie gasped for air, trembling violently from shock and exhaustion. Shadow stepped back cautiously, ears forward. Maggie, breathless and dazed, stared at the stallion in wonder. "Thank you," she whispered, tears streaking her dirty, bruised face. Shadow regarded her silently before turning away, the herd following closely behind as they disappeared into the mist. Left alone again, Maggie drew a ragged breath. She had survived, rescued by creatures she had never expected to help, but her relief quickly hardened into anger and determination. Someone had tried to kill her, and whoever they were, Maggie Dawson would ensure they answered for it.
As the sun lifted higher, piercing through the lingering mountain mist, Shadow led his herd slowly away from the rocky ledge where they performed their extraordinary rescue. Shadow, the majestic black Mustang whose muscular form rippled beneath a sleek ebony coat, carried himself with an authority and grace unmatched by any other creature roaming the Montana wilderness. Local ranchers spoke often of his power and intelligence, but none could truly capture the depth in his dark, thoughtful eyes or the quiet courage in his movements. Shadow was more than just a horse. He was Willow Creek's wild heartbeat, the essence of freedom itself. Behind Shadow, the herd moved with cautious urgency. Among them, Cloud, a gentle mare with a pale cream-colored coat and eyes soft as moonlight, stayed close to her young foal. This foal, Dusty, was scarcely 3 months old, delicate with soft chestnut fur and wide, anxious eyes. Recently, Dusty had sustained an injury, a deep gash across his hind leg from a treacherous hidden rock, and now limped painfully, struggling to match the herd's pace. Shadow understood instinctively that Dusty needed shelter and rest. Winter's harsh grip tightened around Willow Creek, and survival demanded constant vigilance. The mountains loomed dauntingly above, cloaked in forests thick with pines dusted by last night's snow. Shadow guided his herd along winding trails, his ears alert, carefully choosing paths away from dangers known and unseen. Every breath steamed visibly in the frosty air as the Mustangs pressed onward, their hooves crunching softly on snow-covered earth. Their usual grazing grounds now lay buried beneath thick drifts, food scarce and hidden beneath frozen earth. They needed a safe haven, one with shelter, grass, and a natural source of running water that hadn't yet frozen over. Shadow's memory guided him toward Silver Hollow, a hidden meadow nestled between steep cliffs that usually offered refuge during the fiercest storms. Yet, reaching it required a difficult journey through rugged terrain made even more perilous by snowdrifts and slick ice. Hours passed with laborious progress. Dusty stumbled frequently, and Cloud would gently nuzzle him, encouraging him onward. Shadow watched carefully, adjusting their pace to ensure Dusty never fell behind. The wind grew sharper, biting at their flanks as they finally entered a narrow canyon flanked by icy rock walls towering high above. At the canyon's entrance, Shadow paused, sniffing cautiously. Danger often lurked in such bottlenecks, wolves or human hunters. His senses detected nothing alarming, but experience taught caution. He signaled the herd forward, proceeding slowly into the shadowy ravine. Halfway through, a sudden crack echoed sharply overhead. Shadow's heart quickened as chunks of ice tumbled down, crashing dangerously close to Cloud and Dusty. The startled foal panicked, slipping on the icy ground, collapsing onto his injured leg. Cloud neighed desperately, her maternal instincts surging as she tried to shield him from further harm. Shadow moved swiftly, positioning himself beside Dusty, using his powerful body as protection. He glanced upward, waiting for the avalanche of ice and snow to subside. After tense minutes, silence returned. Dusty whimpered softly, frightened and trembling. Shadow gently nudged the young foal, encouraging him to rise. Cloud licked her foal's neck reassuringly as Dusty, guided by his elders, slowly regained his footing. Shadow pressed on, increasing urgency pushing them forward. Soon they emerged safely from the canyon, the meadow of Silver Hollow now visible. Despite their exhaustion, relief rippled visibly through the herd. As the Mustangs entered the sheltered meadow, their tense muscles finally relaxed. Silver Hollow offered high walls blocking the wind, lush grasses still peeking from the snow, and a bubbling stream resiliently flowing despite the cold. Dusty limped gratefully toward the stream, drinking deeply alongside his protective mother. As the herd settled, a figure moved quietly at the meadow's edge, observing cautiously. Abel Tanner, a local rancher in his late 50s, stood wrapped in layers against the chill. Abel was a broad-shouldered man, rugged from years outdoors, his graying hair hidden beneath an old leather hat. His eyes, faded blue yet sharp, studied the horses intently. Abel respected these Mustangs deeply, especially Shadow, whose strength and cunning he'd observed many times before. Abel had spent his entire life in Willow Creek, known widely for his kindness to animals and quiet but firm manner among neighbors. Now he watched Shadow closely, sensing something different in the stallion's bearing, a strange urgency he'd never noticed. The rancher's attention shifted suddenly toward Cloud and Dusty, recognizing the foal's injured gait. Abel frowned thoughtfully. A wound like that needed care to heal properly. The old rancher hesitated, torn between intervening and respecting the wild herd's autonomy. Shadow turned abruptly, sensing Abel's presence. The stallion snorted softly, regarding the rancher steadily without fear or hostility. Their eyes met across the snowy expanse, silent understanding passing between wild horse and wise man. Abel nodded respectfully toward Shadow, acknowledging the stallion's authority and decision. Slowly, Abel withdrew from the meadow, quietly deciding he'd monitor the herd from afar, ready to help only if circumstances grew dire. For now, he would respect their independence, though concern lingered deeply in his chest. As the afternoon waned, the Mustangs rested. Dusty lay close to his mother, comforted by her warmth, his breathing gradually evening out into peaceful sleep. Shadow patrolled the meadow perimeter, ever vigilant, his thoughts occasionally drifting to the strange human he'd saved earlier. Her frightened eyes and whispered gratitude haunted him oddly. Nightfall soon blanketed Silver Hollow in darkness, and Shadow finally allowed himself brief rest. The meadow felt safe enough, at least for now, but as he drifted into uneasy sleep, distant howls pierced the night. His eyes flicked open immediately, ears sharply attentive. Wolves prowled close by, their eerie cries carrying clearly through the bitter air. Shadow stood quickly, alerting the herd with low, urgent neighs. He moved swiftly toward Dusty, positioning himself protectively. Cloud anxiously rose to her feet, pressing her foal against her side. Shadow understood immediately. They were not safe here after all. The wolves had discovered their location. Urging his herd gently but firmly forward, Shadow led them reluctantly from Silver Hollow's temporary sanctuary. Under a sky brilliant with cold, glittering stars, they once again faced the harshness of the winter wilderness. The Mustangs climbed upward, driven by necessity, ultimately finding themselves at the rugged heights near Devil's Ridge, dangerously close to where they'd rescued the human called Maggie. Shadow hesitated momentarily, memories returning sharply. He glanced downward, wondering briefly about Maggie's fate, an unusual curiosity stirring deeply within him. But his herd's safety remained paramount. He pressed onward, determined to find refuge deeper within these perilous mountains, even as the unforgiving night wind howled mournfully around them. Maggie stirred to consciousness slowly, emerging from darkness into a world blurred by pain. Cold wind bit into her skin, forcing clarity as her eyes snapped open in sudden terror. She gasped sharply, heart racing when she felt herself dangling precariously, bound by fraying rope, high above an abyss shrouded in mist. Instinctively, she twisted in panic, but pain exploded through her shoulders, reminding her brutally of her bound wrists and the violent encounter that had left her stranded. The rope creaked ominously, fibers strained by every movement, threatening to snap at any moment. Maggie's mind flashed to her fallen crew in Iraq, faces etched into memory, their last moments haunting her dreams nightly. Now here, She faced death again, utterly alone in Montana's unforgiving wilderness. Despair seeped through her veins, cold and heavy as lead, mingling with her exhaustion and hopelessness. Above, the cliff's edge appeared impossibly distant, beyond any hope of reach. Her body trembled, exhaustion battling fear for dominance. Suddenly, a soft, rhythmic sound broke through her panicked haze. Hoofbeats, muffled by snow but growing steadily closer. Maggie strained her neck upwards, glimpsing movement through the swirling mist. Emerging from the fog was a familiar form, powerful yet graceful, leading a herd that followed obediently. It was the black Mustang she'd seen before, Shadow, his dark eyes sharp, attentive. The horses slowed, near the cliff's edge, sensing her presence. Shadow stepped forward cautiously, his ears flicking forward, nostrils flaring as he sniffed the icy air. His gaze met hers with startling recognition, intelligent and profound. Maggie's pulse quickened. Could he remember her from earlier? Her rational mind argued fiercely against hope, yet his lingering stare suggested something deeper. With deliberate caution, Shadow approached the rope, inspecting it intently, snorting softly as he recognized her distress. Behind him, Cloud watched nervously, Dusty limping close by, drawn by curiosity and instinctive empathy. The other horses stayed back, uneasy yet fascinated, sensing something unusual unfolding before them. Maggie whispered hoarsely, desperation overcoming disbelief, "Please, help me." Her voice, strained and faint, somehow reached Shadow clearly through the chill morning air. The stallion hesitated briefly, considering the request carefully. Then, astonishing Maggie utterly, Shadow took the rope delicately in his strong jaws, testing its strength with calculated pulls. Maggie held her breath, feeling herself shift upwards slightly, the rope straining audibly under tension. Shadow paused momentarily, sensing the danger of fraying fibers. Maggie's heart pounded fiercely in her chest. This miracle felt fragile and fleeting. Sensing Shadow's struggle, Cloud stepped forward, gently gripping the rope beside Shadow, offering quiet support. Dusty, despite his pain, watched closely, moved by a courage he couldn't fully understand yet desperately wished to emulate. Inspired, two more Mustangs cautiously joined, forming a line, each horse gripping the rope with precision and astonishing gentleness. Slowly, impossibly, Maggie rose upward, inch by painful inch. Muscle screamed with every movement, and yet hope surged powerfully through her veins, urging her forward, despite her fear. The rope scraped menacingly against jagged rock edges, fibers fraying dangerously. Each upward movement risked total disaster. Maggie closed her eyes, murmuring silent prayers, her breathing rapid and shallow. Suddenly, the rope snapped partially, and Maggie jolted downward abruptly, suspended by mere threads. Her heart nearly stopped, terror overwhelming her senses. Shadow sensed immediate danger, releasing the frayed portion instantly, repositioning his grip higher, pulling carefully, delicately coordinated by instinct alone. The horses followed his lead meticulously. Maggie, frozen by fear, felt herself rising slowly once more, her body inching toward salvation. In those agonizingly slow moments, Maggie remembered the endless missions she'd flown, the calculated risks, the precise teamwork required for survival. These wild Mustangs, led by Shadow's uncanny intelligence, displayed teamwork she'd rarely witnessed among humans. Finally, with one last powerful yet careful tug, Maggie felt firm ground beneath her knees. Collapsing on a solid earth, her breath came ragged, tears streaking silently down her face, mixing with sweat and dirt. Pain flared from her shoulders, wrists, and skull, injuries made painfully evident now that survival was assured. Shadow stepped back quietly, the rope dropping softly from his jaws, eyes watching Maggie intently, assessing her condition calmly. Cloud returned swiftly to Dusty's side, nuzzling her full reassuringly. The other Mustangs gathered respectfully nearby, sensing they participated in something extraordinary. Maggie lifted her head weakly, gazing with profound gratitude toward Shadow. She whispered softly through cracked lips, "Thank you," her voice trembling with emotion. Shadow regarded her silently, his gaze thoughtful yet unreadable. With a soft snort, he turned slowly, guiding his herd gently away, leaving Maggie momentarily alone in stunned silence. Maggie lay briefly on the frozen ground, regaining strength, her mind replaying the miraculous rescue repeatedly. Her logical mind still struggled with disbelief, yet undeniable gratitude overwhelmed rational thought. Eventually, trembling limbs found stability, and Maggie pushed herself painfully upright, struggling to her feet. Gathering the remnants of her strength, she staggered toward her abandoned ATV, each step agony yet fueled by determination. Reaching it finally, Maggie found her radio intact, though crackling with static. She summoned strength enough to transmit weakly. "Sheriff Walker, it's Maggie. Need immediate assistance at Devil's Ridge." Static buzzed momentarily before Grant Walker's worried voice replied, clearly, relief evident in his tone. "Maggie, stay put. We're coming immediately." As she waited, Maggie slumped exhaustedly against her vehicle, eyes drifting toward distant movement, the Mustangs disappearing gracefully into misty forests. Maggie's heart swelled painfully with emotion, forever changed by this unexpected bond forged in desperation. Meanwhile, back at Willow Creek's small sheriff's office, Sheriff Grant Walker stood swiftly upon receiving Maggie's distress call. Beside him, Deputy Lucas Carter listened intently. Lucas, in his early 40s, had a slender build, with thin brown hair thinning prematurely, giving him a perpetually anxious appearance. His pale eyes darted nervously behind thick glasses, revealing a habitually cautious nature. Grant trusted Lucas implicitly, though he'd always noted his deputy's nervous demeanor, attributing it to harmless anxiety. Lucas shifted uneasily, clearing his throat hesitantly. "Do you really think she stumbled on his smugglers?" Grant nodded solemnly, grabbing his heavy jacket hurriedly. "Something serious happened, Lucas. Maggie isn't easily shaken. Let's hurry." Lucas nodded nervously, hastening toward the door, fingers trembling slightly, more from fear than urgency. As the two men drove quickly toward Devil's Ridge, Lucas glanced sideways at Grant, uncertainty shadowing his gaze. Grant sensed his deputy's anxiety, but his mind remained focused firmly on Maggie's condition. Behind them, hidden amongst Willow Creek's quiet residents, secrets simmered silently, some more dangerous than anyone imagined. Sheriff Grant Walker stood in his small, cluttered office at the Willow Creek police station, staring grimly at a clutter of maps and files spread across his worn oak desk. The room smelled of stale coffee and paper, the walls lined with photographs and commendation from a lifetime spent protecting his beloved hometown. Grant, tall and broad-shouldered, with rugged features softened by silver streaks at his temples, exuded authority balanced by compassion. But now worry shadowed his usually confident expression. Since Maggie's attack, something had gnawed persistently at Grant's gut, a feeling he trusted more than anything. Maggie Dawson, recovering slowly in a small room at the town's only clinic, had barely survived her ordeal. Grant felt responsible, guilt weighing heavily on his heart. He trusted Maggie implicitly, knowing her as someone who rarely faltered under pressure, yet someone had orchestrated an attack designed specifically to eliminate her. The precision of the ambush troubled him deeply. It suggested intimate knowledge of local patrol routes, timing, and even Maggie's solitary habits. Grant sighed heavily, turning toward the window overlooking Main Street. Snow fell softly outside, blanketing everything in quiet whiteness, the tranquil beauty sharply contrasting the turmoil brewing inside. He glanced toward his office door as it swung open, revealing Deputy Lucas Carter entering hesitantly. Lucas Carter had always been slight, thin-shouldered, with nervous eyes darting behind wire-rimmed glasses. His prematurely thinning brown hair and perpetual anxious expression made him appear timid, harmless even. Grant had mentored Lucas since his arrival several years ago, sensing the younger man's insecurity and hoping gentle encouragement would build confidence. Lucas cleared his throat nervously. "Sheriff, Maggie's awake and asking questions again. She seems pretty determined to figure out who attacked her." Grant studied Lucas carefully, noticing subtle signs of stress, shaky hands, pale skin damp with perspiration. "Lucas, sit down a minute," Grant said gently, motioning toward a worn leather chair. Lucas hesitated before complying, shifting uncomfortably under Grant's steady gaze. Grant considered his words carefully, knowing that trust was crucial. "You seem unusually on edge lately, Lucas. Is something troubling you?" Lucas flinched slightly, eyes widening behind his glasses. Maggie almost died. I guess I'm worried." His voice quivered unconvincingly, prompting Grant's suspicion. Choosing caution, Grant simply nodded, replying softly, "We all are, Lucas. Keep me posted if anything unusual turns up." Lucas nodded hastily, retreating swiftly from the office, leaving Grant unsettled, suspicion deepening further. Later that afternoon, Grant visited Maggie at the clinic. Maggie, though still weak, managed a determined posture. Her face remained pale, eyes shadowed by pain and fatigue, but her voice was firm. "Grant, I think the attackers knew exactly when and where I'd be. Someone inside had to help them." Grant sighed heavily, acknowledging the reality he'd feared. "I suspect you're right, Maggie. But suspecting and proving aren't the same." Maggie's gaze turned fiercely resolute, a fire Grant recognized immediately. "Then let's prove it," she stated plainly. After a thoughtful pause, Grant agreed. "All right. Quietly, though, we don't want our insiders spooked." They spent hours discreetly reviewing patrol schedules and incident logs. Patterns emerged. Smugglers consistently evaded patrols whenever Lucas was directly responsible for route planning. Maggie glanced sharply at Grant. "Lucas has coordinated patrol routes several times recently, hasn't he?" Grant felt his chest tighten. "Yes, he volunteered often. I encouraged it, wanted him to gain confidence. Never thought he'd." He trailed off, bitter betrayal stinging painfully. Determinedly, Maggie pushed forward. "We need solid proof." Grant considered carefully. His personal radio logs, he always documents communications meticulously. Maybe something slipped through, something unusual. Late that evening, Grant and Maggie returned secretly to the empty station. Using Grant's master key, they accessed Lucas's tidy desk. Maggie scanned quickly through recent radio transcripts, noticing brief, cryptic entries like "all quiet" or "storm coming soon," always matching the timing of patrols that narrowly missed intercepting suspicious activities. Grant clenched his fists tightly, frustration evident. Clever coding. Still, it's circumstantial evidence at best. Just as discouragement threatened, headlights flashed suddenly through the window, illuminating the dim office. Grant swiftly pulled Maggie into shadows, signaling silence as the station door opened cautiously, admitting Lucas Carter quietly. Lucas moved nervously toward his desk, unaware of their concealed presence. He opened a drawer swiftly, retrieving a small portable radio Grant had never seen before. Lucas whispered anxiously into it, unaware Grant and Maggie strained to hear. "They're suspicious," Lucas hissed softly. "We must adjust timing." A crackling voice replied coldly through static. "Your carelessness exposed us, Lucas. Fix it now or face consequences." Lucas paled visibly, voice trembling. "I'll handle it, just give me." His sentence halted abruptly as Grant stepped forward decisively, gun drawn steadily. "Lucas, put down the radio," Grant ordered coldly, disappointment and anger battling for control. "Lucas froze, panique evident." Maggie emerged from shadows, eyes accusing yet tinged with sadness. "Why, Lucas?" she asked softly, genuine hurt evident. Lucas slumped, defeated, eyes filling with remorse. "Debt," he whispered brokenly. "Gambling, things spiraled. They threatened my family. I never meant." His voice trailed into miserable silence. Grant's jaw tightened bitterly, betrayal slicing deeply. Yet his voice remained steady, resolute. "You endangered lives, Lucas, Maggie's others. You should have trusted us, trusted me." Lucas nodded miserably, overwhelmed by shame. Outside, sirens wailed suddenly, approaching rapidly. Grant had discreetly alerted backup earlier, precaution guiding every decision. Willow Creek's tranquil facade shattered abruptly as deputies arrested Lucas, escorting him away quietly. Grant and Maggie stood silently, hearts heavy with betrayal, yet relieved justice finally approached. Across town, another observer watched from shadowed woods. Abel Tanner, Willow Creek's respected rancher, had come into town seeking medical supplies for Dusty, the injured foal he'd quietly monitored. Abel, stocky with weathered features softened by kind blue eyes, had lived quietly but observantly, often noticing things others overlooked. Seeing Lucas arrested stunned him deeply. Abel knew Lucas since childhood, watched him grow into a nervous but seemingly decent man. Abel wondered silently what drove Lucas to such desperation, saddened profoundly by secrets hidden behind friendly facades. Returning home, Abel carefully tended Dusty, his heart heavy yet comforted slightly by the foal's gentle trust. Dusty, though shy initially, now approached Abel willingly, nudging gently for reassurance. Abel sighed deeply, petting Dusty softly, murmuring, "Sometimes fear drives good folks down dark paths. But there's always hope, always healing." As the night passed quietly, Grant Walker sat alone in his office, contemplating betrayal's bitter aftermath. Trust shattered painfully, yet he resolved determinedly not to lose faith entirely. Willow Creek needed steadfast protection more urgently now. Maggie rested uneasily in her clinic bed, dreams filled with haunting faces from both her Rock and Willow Creek merging together. Betrayals, bravery, hope intertwined chaotically. Despite darkness, resilience burned stubbornly within her, promising strength for challenges ahead. Outside town limits, hidden amid snowy forests, Shadow stood vigilantly, watchful eyes scanning quietly through moonlit darkness, ears twitching cautiously at distant sirens fading slowly. His herd rested nearby safely, yet Shadow sensed clearly that unseen dangers still lurked close, peril threatening everything precious he guarded fiercely. The cold Montana night wrapped Willow Creek in a blanket of frosted silence, the moon casting its silver glow over the town. Sheriff Grant Walker, hunched at his desk, rubbed his weary eyes as he sorted through the last bits of evidence against Lucas Carter. Maggie Dawson sat across from him, her bruised face resolute despite lingering exhaustion. Her shoulders still bore traces of the rope that had nearly ended her life, and her vivid green eyes gleamed fiercely in the dim office light. Outside, snow piled softly against windowsills, and the clock on Grant's cluttered desk ticked methodically, each second thick with tension. The townspeople had retreated indoors, leaving the streets eerily vacant beneath the glowing winter moon. Unbeknownst to them, shadows moved stealthily through the darkened town. At the edge of Willow Creek, Abel Tanner sat quietly in his cabin, tending carefully to Dusty. The foal's leg had improved steadily, and Abel, sturdy and dependable with a weathered face and calm blue eyes, felt pride in Dusty's growing trust. Beside him rested his loyal dog, Rusty, a reddish-brown border collie, intelligent eyes always alert. Suddenly Rusty's ears pricked forward, his soft growl breaking Abel's contemplation. Abel rose swiftly, peering through frosted glass windows into the moonlit night. Several dark figures crept cautiously toward town center, their movements furtive and predatory. Abel's heart quickened instinctively. Trouble had arrived again. Without hesitation, he grabbed his heavy winter coat and an old hunting rifle, moving swiftly toward the sheriff's office. At the station, Maggie noticed headlights dimmed suspiciously as several vehicles approached slowly, halting abruptly near the building. "Grant," she whispered urgently, her tone instantly alert. Grant glanced upward sharply, immediately understanding the imminent threat. He quickly retrieved his service revolver, tossing Maggie a spare firearm. "Stay alert," he ordered firmly, moving quietly toward the front window. Outside, masked figures emerged silently from their vehicles, weapons glinting ominously beneath moonlight. Leading them was Lucas Carter, freed somehow and driven by desperation, his nervous eyes now hard with fear and malice. "We can't let them destroy the evidence," Lucas instructed harshly. "No witnesses either." With calculated precision, the attackers surrounded the building, preparing silently to breach. Grant and Maggie exchanged tense glances, both understanding the severe odds against them. Without warning, the attackers burst into the station, gunfire erupting instantly, shattering windows and splintering furniture. Maggie and Grant dove for cover, returning fire urgently. The office erupted into chaos, smoke filling the confined space rapidly. Lucas entered last, moving deliberately toward evidence lockers in the back room. Grant saw him, anger surging powerfully. "Lucas!" Grant roared through gunfire, betrayal heavy in his voice. Lucas froze momentarily, startled eyes meeting Grant's furious gaze. Then, determination hardened his features again. "It's too late, Grant," Lucas shouted bitterly. "You forced my hand." Outside, Abel Tanner positioned himself strategically behind parked vehicles, aiming his rifle carefully. Rusty crouched beside him obediently, ears flattened anxiously. Abel fired warning shots precisely, scattering several attackers momentarily. Despite his age, Abel's aim remained impressively steady, honed by decades of hunting and ranching. But the attackers regrouped swiftly, overwhelming Abel's isolated resistance. Inside, Maggie and Grant fought desperately, ammunition dwindling rapidly. Maggie felt sharp pains surge through her shoulder as a bullet grazed her, staggering her briefly. Grant grabbed her protectively, pulling her behind cover again. Outside, unnoticed, distant hoofbeats approached rapidly, breaking through the night's violent clamor. Emerging suddenly from snowy darkness was Shadow, his ebony coat gleaming beneath the moon's silvery glow, eyes blazing fiercely. The stallion charged directly toward the attackers surrounding Abel, startling them profoundly, scattering them instantly. Behind Shadow, Cloud, Dusty, and the herd surged bravely, driven by loyalty and instinctive protectiveness. Seeing the herd, Abel exhaled deeply in awe and relief, muttering gratefully, "Bless you, Shadow." Inside, Lucas cornered Maggie, raising his weapon shakily. "This ends here," Lucas declared harshly, desperation quivering his voice. Grant lunged toward Lucas desperately, yet stumbled as another attacker blocked him violently. Maggie, defiant despite exhaustion and injury, stared boldly at Lucas, accepting no defeat. Suddenly, the station door crashed inward dramatically, Shadow bursting into the chaos fearlessly, hooves clattering sharply against the tile floor. Lucas whirled instinctively toward the unexpected intruder, startled thoroughly. "Impossible," Lucas whispered, eyes wide. Shadow reared powerfully, distracting Lucas momentarily. Maggie seized the instant decisively, disarming Lucas swiftly despite her injury. Furious, Lucas grappled Maggie violently, pushing her backward toward shattered glass windows. Grant shouted frantically, trapped momentarily by attackers still resisting desperately. Lucas regained his weapon, aiming deliberately at Maggie. Just as he squeezed the trigger, Shadow moved swiftly, stepping protectively between Lucas and Maggie. The shot echoed sharply, followed immediately by Shadow's anguished whinny. Blood darkened Shadow's sleek coat, crimson blossoming painfully along his flank. Maggie, heart constricting with grief, stared horrified as Shadow staggered slightly, yet remained standing defiantly. Lucas stood frozen, overwhelmed by sudden shame and disbelief. Grant finally subdued remaining attackers decisively, swiftly arresting Lucas firmly, yet sorrowfully. "It's over, Lucas," Grant declared solemnly, deep disappointment shadowing his voice. Outside, Abel hurried into the station, supporting Maggie compassionately. Together, they approached Shadow slowly, concern evident. The stallion trembled faintly, yet stood stubbornly proud, refusing weakness despite pain. Maggie, overcome emotionally, gently touched Shadow's injured flank, tears blurring vision. "I'm so sorry," she whispered brokenly. Shadow nickered softly, pressing his muzzle comfortingly against her trembling shoulder, accepting comfort, yet offering strength simultaneously. The herd gathered cautiously outside, waiting quietly under moonlight, sensing the emotional gravity unfolding within. Abel examined Shadow's wound carefully, breathing relief finally. "He'll survive," Abel reassured Maggie gently. "But we must treat this quickly." Maggie nodded resolutely, determination overcoming grief momentarily. Grant stepped quietly beside Maggie, exhaustion evident yet deep pride shining unmistakably in his steady eyes. "We owe them our lives," Grant stated quietly, gratitude overwhelming his tone. Outside, townspeople cautiously approached, awakened by gunfire and chaos, shocked expressions registering disbelief. Abel addressed the crowd firmly, calmly reassuring them of safety restored finally. Slowly, Willow Creek residents approached Shadow and the herd respectfully, offering sincere thanks and quiet awe for their bravery. Shadow stood steadfastly, wounded yet dignified beneath glowing moonlight, quietly accepting gratitude, yet vigilant still. Maggie felt profound respect, understanding finally that wild spirits could form bonds deeper than human comprehension, transcending boundaries previously imagined impenetrable. Lucas watched quietly, remorse deepening profoundly, understanding fully consequences resulting inevitably from choices made desperately. Grant noticed Lucas's genuine remorse quietly, deciding compassionately to advocate leniency, believing redemption still possible, despite painful betrayal experienced personally. Abel gently guided Shadow toward clinic veterinarians arriving promptly, carefully escorting Stallion toward necessary medical attention. Maggie followed quietly, determinedly pledging silently to protect Shadow, repaying courage and loyalty demonstrated repeatedly. The herd lingered briefly beneath moonlight, restless yet comforted finally by reunited safety, eventually dispersing quietly into snowy woods, awaiting Shadow's safe return. Inside clinic warmth, Shadow received attentive care diligently. Maggie rested beside Stallion patiently, gratitude filling her heart profoundly, understanding deeply the miracles forged unexpectedly amidst darkness and despair. Grant Walker, exhaustion overwhelming finally, returned home thoughtfully, pondering deeply lessons learned painfully through betrayal and redemption intertwined complexly within human hearts. Willow Creek gradually quieted beneath silvery moonlight once again, wounds slowly healing beneath resilience demonstrated by courageously bonded community and majestic wild creatures alike. With the harsh winter finally yielding to early spring, warmth gradually returned to Willow Creek. Snow melted into crystal-clear streams, trickling through green shoots bravely emerging beneath the retreating frost. Life stirred anew in the small town nestled within Montana's protective mountains, the memory of conflict fading gently into the past. Lucas Carter, now behind bars, had cooperated fully with authorities, leading to the complete dismantling of the smuggling network. The townspeople reclaimed their peaceful routines, comforted by the knowledge that their homes and families were safe once more. Sheriff Grant Walker, feeling profound relief tempered with quiet sadness over his former deputy's fate, refocused on healing his community. Willow Creek's residents often saw him walking Main Street, chatting easily, his confident presence a reassuring symbol of stability. One crisp afternoon, Grant stood outside the recently rebuilt police station, observing townspeople busy with daily errands. His eyes softened, reflecting deep satisfaction. Beside him, Abel Tanner smiled warmly, his rugged face weathered but serene, hands tucked into worn jeans. Abel had become a steadfast partner in restoring the town's sense of security, his quiet strength appreciated more deeply than ever. Near them, Rusty, Abel's devoted border collie, frisked energetically, tail wagging joyfully as children tossed sticks for him to fetch. Rusty's reddish fur glistened in sunlight, youthful vigor belying his 7 years. Nearby, Deputy Laura Bennett, newly assigned to Willow Creek, approached quietly, introducing herself politely. Laura, a slender, confident woman in her early 30s, had soft, shoulder-length chestnut hair framing a gentle face with earnest brown eyes. Her calm demeanor and dedication quickly won trust and respect. Sheriff Walker, Laura greeted respectfully, extending a hand firmly. "I've heard great things about your leadership. I'm eager to contribute here." Grant shook her hand warmly, sensing immediately she'd fit perfectly into their close-knit team. "Glad to have you, Laura," he said genuinely. Meanwhile, Maggie Dawson had recovered completely, physically and emotionally stronger than ever. She'd found clarity and renewed purpose in her brush with death and betrayal, determined now to devote herself fully to protecting Willow Creek's breathtaking natural beauty and the wild Mustangs she owed her life to. Maggie approached the town council with passion, proposing an innovative volunteer organization dedicated entirely to preserving nature's fragile balance and safeguarding the majestic Mustang herd. She called her vision Willow Mustang Rangers, a name chosen to honor the bravery she witnessed firsthand. The council approved swiftly, inspired by Maggie's heartfelt conviction and remarkable story. Soon, local residents enthusiastically volunteered, excited to participate actively in conservation and community protection. Abel Tanner offered his considerable experience, becoming a trusted advisor. Even young people joined eagerly, inspired by Maggie's strength and leadership. Maggie soon established a small headquarters at the edge of town, a rustic cabin near rolling fields where the herd often grazed peacefully. Within weeks, volunteers patrolled diligently, learning wilderness survival, tracking techniques, and ecological preservation skills. Maggie, once withdrawn and burdened by painful memories, blossomed confidently, discovering genuine joy through mentoring others and reconnecting deeply with nature. Shadow, too, recovered beautifully under Abel's attentive care, his injury healing steadily. The stallion's spirit never dimmed, his quiet dignity impressing everyone who met him. Soon, Shadow roamed freely again with the herd, frequently appearing near town, seemingly comfortable around people, yet maintaining proud independence. His presence became a comforting daily sight, symbolizing resilience and freedom. The townsfolk affectionately named him the unofficial guardian of Willow Creek, smiling whenever his sleek ebony form appeared gracefully at the horizon, watching protectively. Maggie formed a special bond with Shadow, one rooted firmly in mutual respect rather than ownership. He visited regularly, often waiting patiently near her cabin each morning, eyes meeting hers knowingly. Without saddles or bridles, they developed silent communication built on trust alone. Shadow permitted Maggie to ride him freely, their partnership extraordinary yet entirely natural. Townspeople marveled whenever Maggie appeared, effortlessly mounted on Shadow, gliding swiftly across meadows, an embodiment of harmony between humanity and wildness. Abel Tanner observed quietly one evening, standing beside Grant Walker, both men deeply touched. "Never thought I'd see anything like that," Abel admitted softly, admiration evident. "She's healed him as much as he healed her," Grant agreed thoughtfully. Maggie's rangers quickly became integral, assisting with search and rescue, ensuring mountain trails remained clear and educating visitors about wildlife preservation. Willow Creek thrived visibly, local tourism increasing gently yet sustainably, visitors enchanted by the rare blend of vibrant community and untouched wilderness. One warm, golden afternoon, Maggie gently guided Shadow across verdant fields toward a quiet hilltop overlooking Willow Creek. Below, the town sparkled in soft sunlight, its homes nestled snugly between dense evergreen forests and majestic mountains. Maggie dismounted lightly, Shadow grazing peacefully nearby, ears swiveling gently at surrounding sounds. She felt profound peace, breathing crisp mountain air deeply, allowing tranquility to soothe remaining echoes of past trauma. Footsteps approached quietly behind her, prompting Maggie's gentle smile. Sheriff Grant Walker stood beside her comfortably, gazing thoughtfully down at their peaceful community. "Never gets old, does it?" Grant remarked gently, sincerity filling his voice. "No, it never does," Maggie replied softly, her voice carrying contentment. They shared companionable silence, both appreciating deeply everything overcome together. Maggie finally spoke reflectively. "Funny how the worst moments sometimes lead directly toward what we truly need." Grant nodded slowly, considering carefully. "Sometimes healing means accepting scars, understanding they don't define us, merely remind us how far we've come." Maggie turned slightly, meeting Grant's understanding gaze. Gratitude flowed silently between them, friendship and mutual respect deepening profoundly. Below, Abel Tanner approached quietly, Rusty trotting cheerfully at his side. Abel's sturdy frame exuded contentment, eyes shining warmly beneath sunlight. "Thought we'd find you here," Abel called gently, joining their small group comfortably. "Figured you'd appreciate the view, too," Maggie responded warmly, affection evident. Together they stood, quietly absorbing peacefulness restored completely through perseverance, bravery, and compassion, their bond strengthening visibly beneath clear skies. Nearby, Shadow raised his head alertly, sensing harmony surrounding him fully. His dark eyes met Maggie's knowingly, trust unwavering. He nickered softly, stepping nearer comfortably, gently nudging Maggie's shoulder affectionately. Abel chuckled warmly, commenting appreciatively, "You found something special here, Maggie." Maggie smiled genuinely, replying thoughtfully, "I think maybe it found me." Later, Maggie remounted Shadow gracefully, signaling gentle departure. Grant and Abel watched quietly, Rusty barking cheerfully alongside. Maggie guided Shadow confidently across open fields, moving swiftly towards sunset-painted mountains, freedom and hope filling her completely. She glanced backward once briefly, heart warmed by her chosen home, trusting fully the community she'd embraced wholeheartedly. Beneath endless skies streaked vibrantly with evening's golden hues, Maggie felt profoundly grateful, understanding clearly that healing had truly arrived. Willow Creek embraced her warmly, granting purpose and family she desperately sought. Shadow moved powerfully beneath her, his stride steady, symbolizing beautifully the resilience and courage shared equally between them. They crested gently sloping hills together, twilight gently blanketing everything softly, evening breeze whispering gently around them, carrying clearly the exhilarating winds of freedom. Maggie breathed deeply, heart open fully to endless possibilities unfolding naturally ahead. Life stretched richly forward, filled with promise, community bonds strengthened profoundly, nature preserved passionately. Willow Creek waited warmly beneath them, home forever secured safely within Maggie's heart. Life often leads us down unexpected paths, showing us strength we never knew existed and friendships we never imagined possible. Just like Maggie and the brave Mustang, Shadow, we too face moments when all seems lost, but it's exactly in those times that hope and courage find us. Remember, no betrayal or setback defines us. Rather, it teaches us resilience, forgiveness, and compassion. Today, embrace your freedom, cherish the loyalty of your friends and family, and never underestimate the healing power of nature and faith. If this story touched your heart or inspired you, please share it with someone who needs a reminder of life's beauty and strength. Leave your thoughts and reflections below. We would love to hear from you. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more uplifting stories like this. May God bless you, bring peace into your life, and guide you through your own journey of healing and discovery. Comment Amen below if you believe in the power of hope, courage, and second chances.